So this morning I'm going to show you why I believe, now more than ever, now I could be wrong, but I've mentioned this before, why Israel will use the Samson option to end this current age. Now before you say, oh, I've heard all this before, no, I'm going to show you some things that you might not know in the news and in the scripture that you've likely not even heard. So stay with me on this. I'm going to show you some things. We're going to start with Politico. An article posted, what day was this? It couldn't have been January, yesterday. So you likely have not seen this article. Europe should have grown up a long time ago. Now with Trump, there is no choice. What do they mean by that? Well, you're going to find out. And whether they are right and wrong, that's not the point here that I am trying to make. You see, I'm going to give you some examples of changes in Donald Trump from his first term to his second term. Okay, so you can Google this issue and you'll see it, that under Barack Obama, the United States of America deported, in his first 4 years, deported more illegal aliens than Donald Trump did in his first term. Bet you didn't know that, did you? Go look it up. Don't believe me. Look it up and find out for yourself. Me personally, from my own vantage point, I consider Donald Trump in his first term a very, very weak president. But you see, as you get older, and when people start firing bullets at you and piercing your ear and stuff like that, and your enemies, whoever they might be, try to take you out, try to throw you in jail, try to assassinate you, and your biological clock tells you that you only have a few years to live anyway, suddenly I've been through it all and I don't really care anymore. And he has access to more information than you and I do as to who his enemies really are. So, with that in mind, let's continue reading. Europe's leaders had plenty of warning about what the U.S. president's second term might mean, but amid much eye-rolling, hand-wringing, and wishful thinking, they failed to agree on a plan. Who would ever have imagined we'd find ourselves in circumstances that would prompt France to offer Denmark military support? What? But you didn't hear about that, did you? Hoping to deter threats from a belligerent United States president. Just a few shock and awe days into what will almost certainly be an era-shattering second term, U.S. President Donald Trump has cast us back to the future, to an era of threats, brute force with no established international law to try and keep interstate aggression in check or encourage resolution through diplomacy. I'm going to show you some things that you have not seen. And Donald Trump has shown the public who he's upset at, who he's angry at now. It was only 3 years ago that the world was left aghast by Russia's full-scale invasion of a neighboring sovereign nation, but now it seems Trump, the leader of the free world, and Russia, Vladimir Putin, are of the same mind. No, they're not. Everybody is against each other, as Scripture has shown time and time again what happened in last days. Might makes right, and its pejoratives too. Europe had plenty of warning about what a second Trump term might entail, but amid much eye-rolling, hand-wringing, and wishful thinking, it failed to produce a plan in place that would minimize the impact of a man who seems to relish the prospect of emulating former U.S. President William McKinley. You know, and why is he suggesting William McKinley? Why did he point that out? Because, folks, this article by Politico is a veiled pleading for somebody to do to Donald Trump as they did to William McKinley. Go and Google and find out what happened to William McKinley. Of all the presidents that this Politico article could have pointed out as an example, they chose William McKinley. They could have chose Theodore Roosevelt, but no. They chose William McKinley. That is a veiled pleading for help for someone to do a William McKinley on Donald Trump. Trump lauded McKinley in his inauguration address, praising his predecessor for paving the way for the Panama Canal. We're taking it back, Trump said. And Panama has, according to sources, whether it's true or not, that remains to be seen, but sources are claiming that China is operating portions of the Panama Canal, which is in violation of the treaty. First, of course, the obvious one, the next 4 years are going to be a torrid for them. Trump 2.0 is a disorienting step change from the president's first term. And why do you think that might be? Maybe you, his enemies, were a little bit too gung-ho to take him out, and maybe he's planning on taking revenge. More triumphalist, confident, and determined to ignore guardrails, more revolutionary in how it sets about implementing America First agenda. Disassembling what has gone before is the chosen strategy for what is set to be a massive realignment both at home and abroad, and howls of disapproval from critics which will merely embolden an administration that sees protests as evidence that it's on the right track. The Trump doctrine, pursued at home or abroad, is cut from the same cloth. What the president wants, the president should get without congressional constraints or legal quibble. Hence the arbitrary and likely illegal suspension of foreign aid. How is suspension of foreign aid illegal? So what I'm saying is this guy, Politico, they're not telling the truth. Is anybody telling the truth today? So you should view everything that is written here in suspect manner. Abrupt freezing of federal assistance programs and loans. Well, he rescinded that. And the mass firing of civil servants. Most presidents do that, including inspectors general. The ambition is to replace a seemingly professional civil service. No, it is not a professional civil service. And even Politico had to add the caveat seemingly because they know it's not true. At least at the higher ranks with an enlarged spoils system ahead. Internationally, whether Trump would actually invade Greenland is to some extent beside the point. But he's serious enough about acquiring the island, declining to rule out an invasion, and threatening a fellow NATO member. And that is what I'm trying to get to here. Part of what I'm trying to get to here today is the busting up of NATO. You see, what has happened here in Donald Trump's mind is that NATO, using the vast majority coming from American money, has been trying to get the United States into a nuclear war with Russia. This is what he thinks. Is there some truth to that? Probably. And in Trump 2.0, it is okay to try and poach a territory using military threats or crushing tariffs to do so. Too often, Trump has been mischaracterized as an isolationist. He's not. At heart, he's always been a mercantilist, and his sudden expansionism is wrapped in his ambition to augment U.S. economic power. Greenland has enormous untapped mineral wealth, and 40% of the U.S. seaborne container traffic plies the Panama Canal. This brings us to the second lesson of American Western allies. Their options are stark. It is going to cost cash-strapped Europe one way or another. The bloc has to start looking after itself. Ah, yes, there's the rub. And Donald Trump agrees. According to him, Europe hasn't been paying their fair share of NATO costs. And yes, the Ukraine war proves him to be correct on that. America is no longer willing to pay for Europe's defense in the way that it has before. And Trump's mercantilism will see him do everything he can to ensure U.S. increases its wealth by selling more than it buys from other nations. Muddling through and thinking everything will reset in 4 years' time isn't going to cut it. There's scant common ground between European establishment and the powers that be in Washington now. Once again, he is suggesting there is a separation that's going to occur, that must occur between the United States and the EU. And I, for one, agree, but not for the reasons he thinks and not for the reasons Donald Trump thinks. For other reasons I'll get into later. The first administration's transatlanticists like Mike Pompeo, James Mattis, and H.R. McMaster are long gone. Rather than show at a NATO foreign ministers meeting to get the new transatlantic relationship off to the right foot, new Secretary of State Marco Rubio simply placed a call. There's no one in Washington who can or wants to moderate Trump. You see what's going on here? There might not be a formal breaking of relations between the United States and NATO, but there surely is going to be an informal one. In response, Europe could just roll over and do Trump's bidding, but it would then have to endure without demur its disorienting, goading, and needling. Yeah, like a great whore. Likely followed by ever bigger demands, it would certainly have to follow through on the admittedly justified U.S. demand to dramatically boost defense expenditure and shoulder a much fairer burden of the West's defense. Even Politico has to admit that in their mind, Trump was right on this point. Once again, I'm not on either side. I'm on Israel's side 100%. In this scenario, the bloc should also probably copy Saudi Arabia in purchasing more weapons rather than focus on developing its own defense industries. Taking this route, Europe would have to fully choose between Trump and China. No more fence-sitting or trying to have it both ways in the name of growth. Alternatively, however, the European Union could brace itself against a hurricane and become as coldly and determined transactional as Trump. Go tit for tat, which they would lose, when the inevitable tariffs are imposed, and get serious about strategic autonomy. Europe does not have some economic leverage on its own. If it's steadfast enough to apply it, as Ryan Momtaz of Carnegie Europe highlighted, EU countries represent 45% of all foreign direct investing pouring into the United States in 2023, according to the U.S. Bureau of Economics analysis, amounting to $2.4 trillion. European private savings accounts and businesses invest 3 times as much as the United States as the next region does. This not only creates and sustains millions of U.S. jobs, but it also contributes to fueling America's innovation and industrial edge in its competition with China. Moreover, Europe is responsible for buying 50% of all U.S. liquefied natural gas exports and 28% of all U.S. natural gas exports. From 2019 to 2023, it received more than a quarter of the U.S. arms exports, an uptick from 11% between 2014 and 2018, and it buys 17% of U.S. exports overall. American exporters would thus howl if they started facing retaliatory tariffs. Interestingly, McKinley, who was dubbed the Napoleon of protection, changed his mind about tariffs late into his second term and announced support for reciprocal trade treaties the day before his death. Beyond that, going toe-to-toe with Trump would require a total rethink of geopolitics and Europe's place in the world. It would require refashioning the transatlantic relationship, in other words, the killing of Nato. Refashioning the transatlantic relationship would be the doom of NATO. While Washington actively seeks to split the bloc, the NATO bloc, by approaching its members on a bilateral basis and encouraging ideological allies on the continent like Hungary's Viktor Orban and Slovaks' Robert Fico to disrupt European unity. Europe's leaders have much to blame themselves for. They wasted time and talked a big game while doing little to Trump-proof the bloc. They consigned their nightmare scenario of his return to the back of their minds rather than to prepare for it. And their indecision has compounded the failure to expand the bloc's military forces and to stop treating the transatlantic relationship like an a la carte menu. Now he's right on this one. Picking and choosing delicacies without paying the full tab, just like a woman. The EU should have grown up a long time ago and now may be forced to do so. Well. Now you see, folks, a lot can happen in 4 years. But let's continue, folks, because there's some things that I want to show you, and I'm not going to read this article. I'm just going to point out that, yes, France mulls sending EU troops to Greenland to protect it from the United States of America. Well, ain't that something? How long did it take from the United States government to doing NATO's bidding at every whim? Just a few days later, we have this. That's how fast things can move, folks. Now, this is what I wanted to show you. This is, I guess, on Twitter and from the UK Telegraph in full view. Donald Trump's full speech at Davos World International Forum 2025. My question is, what is he doing at Davos anyway? But then when you see what he did with the American seal, you know exactly why he's there. The arrows on this side and the wheat on this side. When the head is turned toward the wheat, and I want to, before I continue, I want to make sure I'm saying this accurately. American seal. Okay, let's have a look at it, folks. If I can get it to pull up closer. There we go. So, it has been the head of the eagle turned toward the olive. That's right, olive branches. I thought something wasn't quite right. The olive branch. Whereas when the head is turned toward its left, your right, it is turned toward the arrows, peace and war. Now we look at this, and you see it is turned toward the arrows on this side and away from the olive branch. You can plainly see that it's not mirror image, because you see the olive branch right here and you see the clutching of the arrows on this side, that the eagle's head is turned toward its left and your right. You see, I want to show you very carefully. You see the arrows, you see the olive branch. You can see the olive branch very clearly in this picture. Not so much the arrows, but you can still see that they're in fact arrows. What is Donald Trump suggesting? Well, he's suggesting that he is at war, or that the United States is at war, but with whom? With whom? Well, we're about to find out. Now, remember the scripture that I showed you, Daniel 2, concerning the beast of iron. Daniel 2 verse 40, the fourth kingdom shall be strong as iron, forasmuch as iron shatters into pieces and shatters in front of it, because iron crushes and shatters these, all these that came before him. It shall break in pieces and crush. And whereas you saw the feet and the toes, part of iron, a part of potter's clay, and part of iron, the kingdom shall be divided. Might want to go and watch the video I did several days ago. But there shall be in it the strength of iron, for as much as you saw the iron mixed with miry, or mixed with clay. See what that says? Clay potsherd. As the toes of the feet were part of iron and part of clay, so the kingdom shall be partly strong and partly broken. Whereas you saw the iron mixed with miry clay. Now King James Version says they shall mingle themselves with the seed of men, and that is correct, but it actually says it shall come to pass that the seed of men, because of the seed of men, it shall happen, they shall not cling to one another, because iron does not mix with clay. So that adding shall mingle themselves with the seed of men, this is exactly what it is. The doctrine of diversity. As you know, the diversity and the DEI is dead in the United States of America. Okay, so they have finally realized, and listen folks, you got to understand the United States, although it is not of the 10 toes, it is not the 10 toes, it is part of the kingdom of iron. But it's not the 10 toes. 10 toes are in Europe. I have done many videos pointing out who each of the 10 toes are. In the days of these kings shall the Elohim of heaven set up a kingdom. What kings? The 10 toes. Which shall never be destroyed, and the kingdom shall not be left to other people. That kingdom shall break, but it shall break in pieces and consume all these kingdoms, and it shall stand forever. Now I want to show you something. For as much as the stone was cut out of the mountain, and I told you, and I'm going to prove it to you today, that mountain is Mount Zion, Jerusalem, without hands, and it had broken to pieces the iron, the brass, the clay, the silver, and the gold. The great Elohim has made known to the king what shall happen hereafter. And the dream shall be sure, is certain, and its interpretation is you can trust. So, a great stone cut out of a mountain. What is that great stone? Well, I will show you toward the end of this video proof, unadulterated, undeniable truth that the great stone comes from Mount Zion. I want to show you this. First of all, we will go here and I'm going to ask you why the ships of Tarshish are in disagreement with here. It says to Gog Magog, Iran, and Gomer's sons are Ashkenaz and Rifith, which means Europe. What? Do you suppose that NATO is going to indeed break up? This seems like wild speculation, folks. But you see what just happened, literally overnight? Now you have France sending troops to Greenland to protect it from an invasion by the United States? Is NATO going to bust up that quick? And is Europe going to join up with Russia? Is that even possible? Folks, what I'm saying is anything can happen in the next 4 years. Anything. This says, Adonai Yehovah, it will come to pass at the same time, things shall come into your mind concerning Gog Magog, and you shall think an evil thought. And you shall say, I will go to the land of unwalled villages, I will go to them that are at rest, that dwell safely, all of them dwelling without walls. Well, these places that they're talking about is northern Israel, hamlets. These unwalled villages are open country. They are hamlets. See, Jerusalem is not a hamlet, but the towns in northern Israel are. And I want to show you one more thing, just for proof, just so it's impossible to escape this truth. It says Persia, Cush, and Put. That would be North Africa. All of North Africa will join them. And also Gomer. Gomer. I guess I need to go to the table of nations. See, their saying is the descendants of Gomer are traditionally associated with the Sumerians, an ancient people who lived in what is now southern Russia and Ukraine. Well, that is true. But do you want to look at the table of nations? Maybe it's time to do it. Sons of Gomer. Look at there. You see that? Sons of Gomer, Ashkenaz, Riphath, and Togarmah. Now the Jews know exactly who Ashkenaz is. In fact, they call the Jews who were living in Europe Ashkenazi Jews. Why? Because they've been living in Europe. They call the Jews who've been living in North Africa and Egypt Mizrahi Jews. They also call Jews who've been living in Spain and parts of North Africa Sephardi Jews. Let's see if we can find Ashkenaz on the world map. Okay. There's all kinds of ideas. Ashkenaz was at one time in Asia Minor, folks, but map of original Ashkenazic and Sephardic zones. So this, according to the Jews, is Ashkenaz, all of Europe. Now, of course, folks, Riphath was with Ashkenaz, and Riphath was also in France as the Gauls and in Ireland, and still there. Okay, so just to get, so I wanted you to point out, so you see Ashkenazic areas and Sephardic areas, and I told you that this is also not quite correct because they're leaving out the Mizrahi Jews, which are this section here, but it's this right here generally would be the Sephardic areas, and this right here would be the Mizrahi areas, okay? And this area right in here would be Ashkenaz, with Riphath as well. So, that's going to give you some context here. So, what in the world is... Where did my Ezekiel? So all of the sons of Gomer, that also includes Turkey. Because, see here, Ashkenaz, Riphath, and Togarmah, Oh, that will also include Sweden, Norway, and all of them. So it appears. Will Russia be somehow in the next 4 years, maybe, be joining up with Europe against the United States of America? But as you just found out, anything could happen. And you found out, if you read extensively about World War II, how Russia suddenly, being with Germany in the Axis powers, suddenly joined the Allies when the Axis ally of Russia was attacked by Nazi Germany. Bam! Just like that. So, stay awake, folks. So clearly, Ashkenaz is going to be involved in this. Europe. Want proof of that? And he says, again, what Gog, Meshach, Tubal, and all of them are going to do. He says, going to bring you out of the north, and will bring you to the mountains of Israel. And I will smite your bow out of your left hand, and will cause your arrows to fall out of your right hand. And you shall fall upon the mountains of Israel, you and all your bands, and all the people that are with you. Will I give you unto the ravenous birds of every sort, and to the beasts of the field to be devoured. And you shall fall upon the open field, for I have spoken, it says Adonai Jehovah, and I will send a fire on Magog, and among them that dwell carelessly in the coastlands. What do you mean the coastlands? Well, the term Roman Empire did not exist back in at that time. But let's show you what the coastlands are and who there is in reference to. I hope you can see this. Oh, here we go. This is the coastlands. He's specifically talking about the Roman Empire. So he's going to send a fire on them, which means this group, Europe, is going to be siding with the invader of Israel. I suspected long ago that there had to be a split between between Europe and United States of America. Now, let's go back here. Unwalled villages and all of that, to take a spoil, to take a prey, to turn your hand upon the desolate places that are now inhabited, upon the people that are gathered out of the Gentiles, which have gotten cattle and goods and dwelt in the midst of the land. Sheba Dedan, that would be Saudi Arabia, and the merchants of Tarshish, with all the young lions, or just the young lion. It doesn't say all the young lions. It says the merchants of Tarshish and the young lion. Well, who is the young lion beyond the pillars of Heracles? I did a video on that. I proved to you that Tarshish, according to Pliny the Younger, is the land beyond the pillars of Heracles. And one of the pillars of Heracles is a rock of Gibraltar. And the other is a rock somewhere down in Morocco. So beyond that, who is that young lion? You see how King James Version muddies this up? Kafir, young lion. There is one young lion beyond the pillars of Heracles. That is the United States of America. Not all the young, no, the young lion. Beyond the pillar of Heracles shall say unto you, have you come to take a spoil? Have you gathered your company to take a prey, to carry away silver and gold, and take away cattle and goods, and to take away a great spoil? It appears that that young lion of Tarshish is going to pull away from the world, and minding its own business in some ways, enough to where these two powers, Rome, Gog and Magog, with all of their people, will think that they can bully Israel without the young lion of Tarshish doing anything about it. Now I'm throwing out a theory. This is pure conjecture, folks. That something is going to happen that's going to cause the Russians and Europe to unite with each other and declare themselves together the greatest superpower that the world has ever known. And think that they can go around and bully everybody. Are you come to take a spoil? Have you gathered your company to take a prey, to carry away silver and gold, and take away cattle and goods, take a great spoil? So obviously, the young lion of Tarshish is not going to be involved in the invasion of Israel that Europe and Russia and all of their allies are trying to do in the Middle East. So you see, and that's the reason why. That's the reason why a fire comes down on Gog and Magog, but also the 10 toes. Also, those who dwell carelessly in the coastlands, that's the Roman Empire. The 10 kings of Europe. Now, will it be a miracle, or will it be, well, there obviously is going to be miracles involved. There's going to be a great earthquake in the land of Israel. That's what it says. Great earthquake. It says something down here. It says something down here. When it says, I will call for a sword in the mountains, in the mountain, says Adonai Yehovah. And every man's sword shall be against his brother. This is the great world war of Zechariah 9. This is the great war of Haggai 2, verses 18 through 22. This is not going to be just localized. But if he is going to declare war against these invaders, and fire lands upon their lands, nuclear war, then of course Russia retaliates against everyone with their nukes, as you can see in Revelation 9, verses 17 and 18, I believe. Yes. And I have done many, many videos pointing out that the colors of fire, jacinth, and brimstone are the colors of the ribbon of St. George, which is the colors of Russia. And I have spoke often on this YouTube channel about the Samson option. Now, further proof of Europe's destruction. And who is going to do it? And I will continue and continue and continue. Arise and shine, for thy light is come, and the glory of not the Lord, but Jehovah is risen upon you. Darkness shall cover the land, and gross darkness to people. What people? But Jehovah, not the Lord, shall arise upon you, and his glory shall seem to be upon you. The Gentiles will come to your light. Why? Because there's darkness in their own land. Remember, we just read in Daniel 9, or you can read in it, it says right here, verse 35, when the iron and the clay and the brass and the silver and the gold broke to pieces together and became like the chaff of the summer threshing floors, and the wind carried them away, so that no place was found for them. For them to what? To live. They will now be suddenly homeless. Who? Who is going to be homeless? I will show you. So the Gentiles shall come to your light, because they're going to be homeless. But which ones? And the kings to the brightness of your rising. Lift up your eyes round about and look. To gather, to collect, they come to you. Your sons are coming to you from afar, and your daughters shall be nursed at your side. See the stream of people. Your heart will be in awe, and your tents will be enlarged to grow wide, because of the crowd murmuring of the Yam, that is the coastlands of the sea, not shall be converted unto you, but shall be overthrown. Overthrown. Overturned. Cities overturned as a sign of not God's wrath, but Jehovah's wrath. Because something that was fired out of Zion and burned their lands and caused gross darkness. Shall be overthrown when the armies of the Gentiles invade. Multitudes of camels to cover. The dromedaries of Midian, Ephah, and they of Sheba. See that? Territory in southwest Arabia, Sheba Dedan, shall come, and they will bring gold and incense. And they have lots of gold and incense over there, if you haven't bothered to check. And they will show forth praises to Jehovah. What kind of chicanery is Europe and Russia going to do to cause all this? And remember, those who fly as a cloud, as doves to the windows. The coastlands, it says, wait, kava, to bind together, collect together, in expectation of what? They're all collecting together, just like I said in the earlier part of the chapter. For what? For the ships of Tarshish. Why? Because there's no more ships in Europe? Is that what happened? Did everything get blown up in Europe? And now the Israelis, the Jews, are waiting and collecting themselves together so that the ships of Tarshish could bring your sons from afar? Flying ships like doves to the windows of Tarshish unto Shem Yehovah. You know that name that Martin Luther so despised and ridiculed in his book Von Shem Hamaforish. That name, Elohim, the Holy One of Israel, or the Ruach, or the Kadosh, I should say. I got my words mixed up. Or the Kadosh of Israel. And he will glorify Israel. The sons of strangers shall build up your walls. That's right. The invaders are going to build those walls. And they're going to pay for it. And their kings shall be your servants. Because in my wrath I smote you, but now in my favor I have now have mercy upon you. Okay? And just a reminder to all of you anti-Semites out there, your gates will be open continually at Zion's gates to bring in all the wealth of the Gentiles. The wealth of the Gentiles. And also that their kings might be carried away for judgment. That's right. For the Goy and the kingdom that will not serve you, they shall perish. Yes, all of the Goy shall be utterly wasted. The sons also of them that afflicted you, that called you kikes, and all these other names, shall come bending unto you, and all that despise you shall bow themselves down at the soles of your feet, and they shall call you the city of Jehovah, Zion, Kadosh of Israel. And there's nothing you invaders, you Europeans, you Russians can do to stop it. Now, this war describes who these are. Who it would be Yehuda, Ephraim, versus the sons of Greece, aka Western civilization. Okay? That's Zechariah 9. So now what I want to do is go to Isaiah 51, or Isaiah 51. Let me say it correctly here. Listen unto me, you that follow after righteousness, you that seek not the Lord, but Jehovah. If you seek the Lord, you do not seek Jehovah. I want you to understand that. Look unto the rock where you are hewn, and to the hole of the pit where you are digged. So this stone was cut out of a rock. Where is this rock located? It is located at a piece of land, because at the hole where you were digged from. So that stone cut out of a mountain is a stone cut out of Mount Zion. This is salvation for Zion. Even King James Version knows this. Look unto Abraham your Ab, and unto Sarah that bore you. I called him alone and blessed him and increased him. Jehovah shall comfort Zion. There's your answer. Zion is that rock. In Daniel 2 verse 41. Okay? And you should read this whole chapter. Verse 11. The ransomed of Jehovah, not the Lord, shall return. When will they return? After that great war where the Samson option is launched. And come with singing unto Zion, and everlasting joy shall be upon their head, and they shall obtain gladness and joy, and sorrow and mourning shall flee away from them. The captive exile, that's us Zionist Jews who live in foreign lands, will hasten when he is loosed, and he will appear. Let's see what it says here. Yeah, loose. When he is loosed. Right. That he should not die in the pit, nor that his bread should fail. Because if you stay in that pit, if you stay in that abyss of Europe, you're going to die. Because your bread will fail. Jehovah Elohim will break the sea, the Yam, the Mediterranean Sea, whose waves roared. Jehovah of hosts is his name. Set the speech in the mouth, and have covered you in the shadow of my hand, that I may plant the heavens and lay the foundations of the earth, and say unto Zion, you are my people. Awake, awake, stand up, O Jerusalem, which has drunk of the hand of Jehovah, and the cup of his fury. You have drunken the dregs of the cup of trembling, and have wrung them out. There is none to guide among the sons whom has brought forth, neither is there any to take her by the hand of all the sons that she has brought up. These two things have come upon you: desolation and destruction, and the famine and the sword. Your sons have passed out, they lie at the head of the streets, like an antelope in a net, because of the fury of Jehovah, the rebuke of Elohim. Now listen here, you afflicted and drunk without wine. Jehovah, or I should say Adon, Jehovah Elohim says this: to strive, to contend, to grapple, to wrangle the cause of his people. I have taken out the cup, out of your hand the cup of trembling, even the dregs of the cup of my fury, and you shall no more drink it again. But I will put it into the hand of them that afflicted you, that have said to your soul, bow down, that we may go over, and that you have laid your body as a ground, as a street, to them that went over. Yeah, these people who are forced to bend down and lay down at the behest of the Europeans and others. So, back to the Samson option. I don't have time to read the whole thing, but I ask each and every one of you to read this top to bottom so that you know how this is going to go down. There does appear to be a rift, and I have mentioned it over and over and over again for at least the last 5 years, going on between the United States and Europe. I have a feeling that NATO is going to break up, that it will probably no longer exist by the time the 4 years of Donald Trump have expired. In fact, I'm going to take a wild guess. It will probably be null and void by the time this year is over. And it does appear that there will be a union between Russia and the EU. And they will probably decide they're going to fix the Jewish question once and for all. But they're going to learn. And they're going to learn the hard way. And they're going to feel the Samson option, whatever the Samson option might be.